The information discussed in this PILCast episode are merely opinions and do not constitute formal policy or legal guidance of any kind.
Hello, and welcome to another PILCast, the video blog where we talk about important federal procurement innovations in 10 minutes or less. We guarantee it. I'm Scott Simpson with the DHS Procurement Innovation Lab.
And I'm Trevor Wagner, also with the PIL.
What better way to start the new year than with a special episode for you today? That's right. It's another Monday Morning Court-erback. We're going to be talking about the TekSynap GAO case from October 6, 2022.
That's right, Scott. In this case, a Department of Justice issued a solicitation under NITAAC CIO-SP3, so they're under 16505, fair opportunity. The requirement was for IT support services, and they were going to use the best value trade-off process, considering three non-price factors: technical approach, past performance, and key personnel resume. Price was the least important factor.
All right. So after award, the protester challenged the decision made by the source selection official, the SSO, and they stated that in conducting the best value trade-off, the agency credited the awardee with proposed innovation. But the protester said the solicitation didn't identify innovations as a matter of consideration. Let's see what the GAO had to say about this.
All right. Well, first, the GAO restates it's a well-established rule for reviewing the adequacy of trade-off decisions. And here's a quote from that. An agency has broad discretion in making a trade-off between price and non-price factors, and the extent to which one may be sacrificed for the other is governed only by the test of rationality and consistency with the solicitation's stated evaluation criteria. There is no need for extensive documentation of every considered factor into a trade-off decision. Rather, the documentation need only be sufficient to establish that the agency was aware of the relative merits and costs of the competing proposals and that the source selection was reasonably based. Whew, that's important information. You don't need to have extensive documentation, just enough to show that you're aware of the relative merits and costs of competing proposals.
Right. So in documenting the trade-off decision here, the SSO noted that the protester demonstrated a slightly better technical approach. That's factor one. So the protester had a slightly better factor one, even though they had the same adjectival rating as the awardee. But the SSO noted, the awardee demonstrated a better key personnel and past performance approach. That's factor two and factor three. Additionally, the awardee demonstrated a technical approach with many innovations. And so the SSO concluded that it was in the government's best interest to pay a small price premium. It was just 1.29% in order to award to the higher technical proposal that was the awardee. All right, Trevor, what did the GAO say about that?
Well, first, what did Trevor say about that? And I think that sounds great. Shouldn't be any problems. We definitely want some innovations. Is that okay? Well, here's another quote from that decision. We find nothing improper with the SSO's consideration of the extent to which an offeror proposed innovative technical approaches and reject the protester's contention that this amounts to the consideration of unstated evaluation criteria. With specific regard to the consideration of innovations and or creative approaches to distinguish the relative quality of proposals or quotations, an agency can properly consider both the extent to which the proposal or quotation exceeds the solicitation requirements and the extent to which the offerors propose innovative measures to respond to those requirements.
Well, there you have it. Don't be afraid to recognize innovations and other creative approaches and document them as something that exceeds the solicitation requirement, even if your solicitation didn't specifically call out innovation, because, as the GAO says, these may end up as distinguishing qualities that help make your trade-off value, your best value trade-off decision better, easier.
Now, like always, the protester had several other grounds, and one of the ones that stuck out to me is their argument that the contracting officer failed to properly weigh the evaluation factors. Specifically, the protester had a stronger factor 1 evaluation, the most important factor, while the awardee had a stronger evaluation for factor 2 and 3, and they had a higher price. So, I know what I think about this, Scott. What did the GAO have to say?
Well, first let's bring up a graphic so that everyone can see exactly what we're talking about. So as you can see, the SSO noted that factor 1 was stronger for the protester, factor 2 was stronger for the awardee, and factor 3 was stronger for the awardee. Overall, the protester had a slightly lower price. That's that 1.29%. The GAO was okay with that. They said, in the trade-off decision, the SSO explicitly recognized that the technical approach was the most important of the 3 non-price factors, just like they said in the solicitation. The GAO continued, further, in conducting the trade-off, the SSO specifically considered the proposals of the awardee and the protester under the technical approach factor and recognized that the protester demonstrated a slightly better technical approach for factor 1. GAO wraps it up, but the SSO was not required to find that the protester's proposal was overall superior to the awardees under the non-price factors simply because the proposal was considered superior under the most heavily weighted technical approach factor 1.
That's right, Scott. Remember, the evaluation's order of importance does not dictate who the winner will be. That's what a best value trade-off is all about. The government should take into account the most important factor, as well as the other factors along with price to make its trade-off decision. The government has repeatedly stated that, quote, there is no requirement that the key award discriminator also be the most heavily weighted valuation consideration. Whew. So as you like to say, you have a lot of discretion.
Well, that's going to take it or do it for this special PILCast of Monday Morning Court-erback. You can find the GAO case citation in the description below so that you can read it for yourself. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification button so that you get all of our latest episodes. See you next time.